Pucks with Haggs
is brought to you by Prizepicks.
Welcome to the Pucks with Haggs podcast, sponsored by Prizepicks. The playoff push is heating up and tournament hoops are here, and there's no better way to cash in if you're right on the high-flying hoops action than Prizepicks, where it always feels good to be right. Every bucket, every dime, and every win means more when you're playing on Prizepicks, and with their new brand new team pick markets, you can now pick game winners, spreads, and totals on top of the player picks that you already know about. So cash in if you're right during all the clutch baskets, slam dunks, and Cinderellas this spring with team picks on Prizepicks. Download the Prizepicks app today and use the code or pick your first game winner, spread, or total as the playoff push rolls on, and get $50 in daily fantasy lineups when you play your first $5 lineup when you use the code CLNS. That's code CLNS to get $50 in daily fantasy lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. Prizepicks, where it's good to be right. I also want to let you know this show is sponsored by Awaken 180, and it is working for me. I'm down 25 pounds in 5 weeks on the program. Let it work for you, and definitely tell them Haggs from CLNS sent you. Online at awaken180weightloss.com. That's awaken180weightloss.com, or call 844-346-1800. I also want to let you know that you're listening to the Pucks with Haggs podcast, a proud member of the CLNS Media Network. Make sure to hit subscribe to the Bruins Ringside YouTube channel. Turn on notifications for when a new video drops on the channel. All right, welcome in, everybody, to this edition of the Pucks with Haggs podcast. I'm your host, Joe Haggerty. You can find my work at joehaggerty.substack.com. Subscribe and get yourself a premium membership. Get all of my Bruins and NHL writing sent straight directly to your inbox. I also write columns for the Boston Sports Journal and do a weekly Q&A with the subscribers at the Boston Sports Journal. So make sure to check that out. Lots of great content on all the four major pro sports. We had a crossover, Mick, last night of Drake May being at the Boston Bruins game, some Patriots-Bruins crossover there. With me today, longtime friend and colleague, Mick Colageo. Mick, please tell everybody where they can find your work as you guest on the 279th episode of the Pucks with Haggs podcast.
The David Warsofsky edition, maybe? Is that possible?
Yes.
I can't remember anymore.
There you go.
I can drink wrap. That's what I do, and it's linked on X and Facebook, and I help out the Hockey News when they do their big issues like the yearbook, the Money Power, the Prospects Future Watch, etc. So that's basically what I'm up to these days. Drake May, probably the biggest cheer of the night to that point. I mean, that was a loud greeting for Drake May, who I think, culturally takes more naturally to a Celtics game than a Bruins game, but it was pretty awesome to see him there, and awesome for the Bruins fans to make him feel so welcome. That was pretty cool.
It was very cool. And by the way, it's that time of morning where I've got the morning snack for the Awaken 180. So I'm going to be delving into that. They have you put something in your body like a snack or a meal every like 2 or 3 hours. That's part of the whole plan there, Mick. So I'm gonna down this a little bit while I'm talking to you.
Well, I'm just going to mention right now that while the Awaken 180 is vanilla, we're not. This show is not vanilla.
No, but the vanilla is actually delicious, the vanilla shake here. And I'll give you an update, down 30 pounds in 6 weeks. Awaken 180 definitely works. Bruins win last night against the Dallas Stars 6-3. Another good win against a quality opponent. The Stars were maybe banged up a little bit, but they made a push. The Bruins won the first period. The Stars won the second period. It was a tie game going into the third, 50-50 jump ball going into the final 20 minutes. And Hampus Lindholm comes out and scores a goal in the first shift of the game, like 12 seconds into the third period. He's got 5 goals in 6 games, 7 points in 6 games. Seems to really be elevating his game where he's playing better. And I also think he's maybe responding to playing with Morgan Geekie and Lucas Reichel right now. And that seems to have, allowed him to play a little bit better. Maybe it's more favorable matchups and more of a third-line center sort of position. Maybe it's just him sort of distancing himself from anything physically that was bothering him coming off the Olympics. But that was just a nice shot from the faceoff circle that beat the goalie clean last night for that goal and really provided the turning point in the game, Mick.
Elias Lindholm has a great shot. This guy, I remember the game last season when Joe Sacco was coaching. The Bruins had a pretty good December, and they were in the playoff hunt, and they went to New York, and the Rangers had lost something like 7 in a row. And so I'm thinking, here it is, January 2nd, 2025, and the Bruins are in pretty good shape. Well, they went in there and laid an egg. They were awful. They left 2 points on the table. They stunk. The one good thing that happened all night, besides me going down to the concourse in second intermission and saying hello to my cousin Kristen, was uh, was Elias Lindholm scoring from the bottom of the right circle. This flick of the wrist laser, top corner, far side on Shesterkin. And it was just like, holy crap, this guy can shoot the puck. Do it more often. So nice to see anytime Lindholm lights the lamp. As far as beyond the alliteration, I'll just allude to that, yeah, the Stars were massively banged up for this game. That having been said, you're trying to pull it out when Heiskanen plays 25 minutes.
Yep.
Rantanen plays 22. Wyatt Johnston, who made a gorgeous backhand roofer on Korpisalo for a power play goal that kept it interesting in the third, he played 23. Yep. They stacked, unlike the Bruins, who had a marvelously engineered balance in their ice time. That game managed to take the minimum out of everybody for them to play to their identity, play hard, do what they do, and still have such balance on the sheet after the game. I was really impressed with how Marco Sturm managed to do that for a win against Dallas, because you figure after the big weekend, this was going to be a tough game to turn around and come back to, and they did it.
Yeah, and they were pushed, they definitely got off to a good start and then kind of took a nap in the second period and had some defensive breakdowns and some issues where Dallas made some good plays. The Matt Duchene play was really nice too, that he scored on, where he just pulled it quickly to the front of the net and beat Korpisalo. But that was also both D-men chasing the puck behind the net and nobody in front. Like Victor Arvidsson was like the lone guy left to try to defend the front of the net, and that's a bad news coverage breakdown situation when that happened. So, and they got pushed, and then they ended up responding again in the third period. And really, Mick, and this was the talk last night, and I actually wrote this the other day after the previous win in Columbus. There's a believability to this team now. Like, they believe in that they can come back. They believe that they can compete against the best teams. They believe that they're a playoff team. Like, you can sense and feel all that in the locker room and when you're talking to these players. And you can see it, frankly, on the ice, too, with the way they respond to adverse situations or another team really making a push at them, with the way they absorb it and then come right back and can collect themselves, like during an intermission if they have a bad period or a bad sequence hits them, and come out with a whole different energy. And part of that is just, the overall sort of like personality, identity of the team. And part of that is when you have a really good team, when you have a playoff team, a worthy team, you see different players step up different games. And I thought we saw some perfect examples of that the last couple of games. The Columbus game, they were dreadful at the beginning of that game, obviously. And then you saw at the end of the first period, Tanner Jeannot take on Eric Gabranson, a long-time veteran, big boy, tough guy, defenseman. And then you saw Mark Kastelik take on one of the toughest guys in the league, if not the toughest, in Matthew Olivier. And both were kind of like trying to wake up the rest of the team. And it did spark them to start playing better. And it sort of set the tone and the message that, like, those guys weren't going to go down without a fight, and it was time for everybody else to get engaged in the game, and it happened. And that was just tremendous leadership on their part. I think it shows how there's a lot of veteran players on this team that are leaders. It's not just the guys with the letters on their sweater. And then in this last game, Henry Jokiharju scores his first goal in a Bruins uniform, has a pretty good game, has played well, I think, stepping in for with Mason Loheri being injured. And Korpisalo continues to play well in net when his number is called here at key points when you need your backup to play really well because you're trotting out Swayman so much and his workload has definitely elevated, playing both ends of the back-to-back over the weekend. So you're seeing different corners of the team and different players than the usual suspects step up and do things and provide emotional and physical and just execution sparks on the ice. And it really lends itself to like looking at the team and saying, this is a legit team. They're a playoff team. And I think they're going to be a handful for a team in the first round based on them having to play the way that they've played down the stretch going into the playoffs and the belief that they have. Like whoever they play in the first round is going to have a really difficult time. Do I think the Bruins are going to go on a 2-month playoff Stanley Cup run this year? No, they're not built for that. But I think they are going to provide us with at least a few weeks of entertaining hockey once the regular season is over.
Right. I think my only scenario that could really be a spoiler to that is if they get the Lightning and they take penalties, because every year the NHL officials tend to do a reminder to everybody, like a reset on enforcement standards. So the first week of the playoffs tend to be power play oriented, and the Bruins could find themselves in a hole in such a series. If they take the penalties, we only need to go back to the stadium game at the Bucks stadium there on February 1st or 2nd, whatever it was, that they led 5-1 in the second period. They were 5-on-5. They were grinding the Lightning to a pulp, and then couldn't get a call to save their lives, and it became the Nikita Kucherov show. So that's my one nightmare scenario for the Bruins in the opening round. Other than that, my total vibe is in sync with what you just said, that they are a team. I think we could probably say that a lot of teams are going to be battle tested when they get there, and a lot of upper seeds are going to have a hard time trying to put away lower seeds. Dallas, Minnesota might not be the only good first round playoff series. It
Yeah.
might. It's the one to watch, no question about it. But it's there's going to be a lot of drama in the first round, and we always get at least one stunning upset in the first round. Who's it going to be? And maybe upsets are going to be hard to come by because, I mean, at least in the East, everything has been so tightly packed that there really hasn't been a lot of distance between the top and the middle. There really hasn't. There haven't been any teams who knocked it so far out of the park. Yeah, the Carolina Hurricanes, there's never been a doubt all season long that they were going to be in the playoffs. And the Lightning have emerged in the Atlantic, of course. But and Buffalo's had this tremendous run, but I look at them and say that's the team that might go down in the first round. Is nobody wants to. A lot of people don't want to see it. They're going to be the darlings of this playoff, but it's going to be a tough assignment for them after all they've done to rescue what was looking like a typically horrible, laughable, make fun of season and just change the script like they have. And now they're going to get there. Can they actually win a series now? Going to be tough.
Yeah, and it's a good point you make about the East, where like there really isn't anything I would consider an upset, even if it's a lower seed, a wild card team knocking off a division winner. There's no real clear cut favorite or team that I think is a juggernaut coming out of the East. I think any of those higher teams are open for to lose to a lower team, and there is definitely not a lot of separation between those two groups. The lower sort of teams in the playoff structure and the higher teams, and the other mitigating factor for the Bruins. You talk about the power play for the Lightning, sure, and they obviously have a good goalie, an experienced goalie in Vasilevsky, but I think Jeremy Swayman is a huge factor for the Bruins on the other side, where he's the kind of goalie that can take over a playoff series and really steal games and dominate. And he's shown he can do it before. And he's sort of in that mode right now where the way he's playing, where he was in the playoffs a couple of years ago, the last time he was there. And the reason he ended up getting signed to the huge contract that he has, in at least like significant part, was the way he looked in the playoffs, and that he had proven he could be a guy that could elevate his game in the big games and in the postseason. And like, I think that is a massive factor for the Bruins, and something that I think should give them a lot of confidence and should scare the daylights out of a lot of teams that they're playing, is the level that he's playing at. In addition, to the Bruins in general. Like, last night was impressive, Mick. They only allowed 3 shots on goal in the third period. Like, defensively, they were very strong in the last 20 minutes. And to your point, they needed a Wyatt Johnston phenomenal play in order for them to score. But they were outshot 9-3. It was totally nasty. They were outshot 9-3 in a third period of a jump ball game by the Bruins, where clearly the Bruins came out and said, we're just going to play good system defensive hockey, play responsible, and, just attack. And they did that. And it was a really interesting telling showcase for me of now they can kind of turn it on a little bit and certainly play the way they need to play when they want to.
Yeah, and as we're concerned, Jeremy Swayman, the way the Bruins have been at home this season, he may only need to do it once on the road. He may only need to steal one. So I guess anything is possible where you can say, okay, now I know there's this long-standing theory that the NHL playoffs are really kind of a crapshoot and a mosh pit. And yeah, the first round is, and maybe the second as well. For a team to actually drink from the chalice, you have to be legit. And until the Washington Capitals in 2018, every team that won the Stanley Cup in the salary cap era, going back to the 05-06 Carolina Hurricanes, had also appeared in another Stanley Cup final within 3 or 4 seasons of that victory, legitimizing them as a team that belonged in that spot, that they had a real legit team. And I think that will continue. I do think that anybody can lose. The potholes, the first round of the Stanley Cup final, of the Stanley Cup playoffs, is a minefield, and lots can happen. But the idea that all we need to do is get in and anything can happen, because look at the 2012 LA Kings, who then went back and won it again in 14. They took the Blackhawks to the conference final in 13. So they were legit. They had the roster construction of a champion. The Bruins they do have the foundational pieces. They've got the goaltender. They've got I think a legit big 3 on defense. And I think that they've got a lot of character and defensive structure up front. They got a great line driving winger in Pasternak. Have they come to maturation? Maybe this version of them is. Maybe this version of the Bruins has come to maturation, but as a blueprint and a roster, we know that that's down the road as they air out their draft picks and prospects and try to achieve some elite integration of elite talent, the forward lines, that may be ahead of them. That's the thinking. But in the short term, the Bruins are playing to their identity right now, and it's happening at the right time.
It most certainly is. I agree. I don't. This isn't the full maturation of what this team is going to be. They're sort of in a transitional phase, and this is the team that's sort of, I think we're going to look back on this year's team as the one that got them pointed back in the right direction and where they needed to go. I don't think by any means this is the finished product that we're watching on the ice, but by the same token, a lot of these same players are going to be back here next year. I think there's going to be some other players added, obviously, significant ones too. But I do think, they're at a point now where, like, a lot of these players, though, need to continue to get playoff experience, and they need to sort of build where they are and keep going in that direction towards, maybe 2 years down the road, a year down the road, being what we would consider a legit Stanley Cup contender. But there's no doubt that a big chunk of this group is going to be a part of that group too, and it's really important for them to take the step that they're taking right now. And it'll be like similar, I think, to the team we looked back on in 07-08 that sort of got the Bruins back into relevancy and started the push towards them winning in 2011, of which a lot of those players were on that 07-08 team, including Marco Sturm, the guy that's the head coach now. So, we'll see how it goes, but let's take a break in the action right now to talk about Prizepicks, our friends at Prizepicks. The playoff push is heating up and tournament hoops are here, and there's no better way to cash in if you're right on the high-flying hoops action than Prizepicks, where it always feels good to be right. Every bucket, every dime, and every win means you're playing on Prizepicks, the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. And with their brand new Team Picks markets, you can now pick game winners, spreads, and totals on top of the player picks you already know. So cash in if you're right during all the clutch buckets, slam dunks, and Cinderellas this spring with Team Picks on Prizepicks. Join over 10 million users and get started today. Instead of battling thousands of other players that could be pros or sharks, you simply pick more or less than 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you watch the winnings roll right in. Pick from all your favorite sports, anything from basketball, baseball, hockey, UFC, soccer, college basketball, tennis, golf, esports, so much more. Fun and super simple. And now with the new Team Picks options, it's even more fun watching the game with my buddies. On Prizepicks, I can even pick who is going to cut down the nets in a couple of weeks, or who's going to win a ring this summer, whether it's the tournament, the playoffs, or even the international baseball tournament. I can call my shot and cash in if I make the right picks, all on Prizepicks. I love making the team picks on Prizepicks, and they don't just have individual games. If you click into team picks, you can even pick who will win the league, MVP, or other awards. It's just another way to pick the sports you love, all on Prizepicks. Our individual picks for this week are Dylan Larkin, more than 3.5 shots on goal. Connor Bedard, more than 20.75 time on ice. Mika Zibanejad, more than 0.5 goals. Download the Prizepicks app today and pick your first game winner, spread, or total as the playoff push rolls on, and get $50 in daily fantasy lineups when you play your first $5 lineup when you use code CLNS. That's code CLNS to get $50 in daily fantasy lineups when you play your first $5 Prizepicks.
Joe Haggerty here. I've been a big guy my whole life. That is not breaking news. And for years, if anybody asked how I felt, I'd say, I'm fine. And I believed it. Now I'm down 25 pounds with Awaken 180. And what hit me first wasn't just the scale. It was realizing how I felt before and had just gotten used to. Now I'm sleeping better. I'm in a better mood. My energy and focus are way better. I can tie my skates at hockey practice without holding my breath. And the craziest part, I wasn't nervous to start talking about it publicly. What if I couldn't do it? That fear was just never there because this program is easy. No guesswork, real results, coaches who care, and doing it without medications. I want to be active with my kids now, and I want to be around for them for years to come. If you're looking for more, how about this? Free support for life after dropping the weight. It's a no-brainer. Do what I did and reserve your consultation today at awaken180weightloss.com. Tell them you heard it from me or on our CLNS podcast. That's awaken180weightloss.com.
All right, I want to let everybody also know that you are listening to the Pucks with Haggs podcast on the CLNS Media Network. We ask that you subscribe to the podcast, like and leave a review. And for those watching the show on CLNS and enjoying all this hockey talk, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the Bruins Ringside YouTube channel, where you can find our show and a lot of other great Bruins content with fellow Bruins talkers like Conor Ryan and Evan Marinofski. There's also CLNS Media Network and Celtics All Access on CLNS, the NBA History Channel, Patriots Press Pass, and the Bruins Ringside YouTube channels as well. Also, please make sure to turn on your notifications so you know the very instant a new Pucks with Haggs podcast video drops on the interwebs. All right, Mick, got to give the Bruins some credit for the 10-3-3 month of March that they embarked on. They now have a 6-point lead for the top wildcard spot, an 8-point cushion for the an overall playoff spot, a 98.2% chance of making the playoffs, according to one website that I saw, moneypuck.net, I think it was called. super impressive finishing kick for them. What are the things that maybe you've noticed the most, or what do you think has been the most remarkable during this stretch? For me, it's got to be Pavel Zacha and the way that he's played. I think 13 goals since the Olympic break, and really was just a dominant force in the month of March, and might even have a chance at a 30-goal season if he continues to stay hot all the way to the end, which I don't know if any of us saw that coming this year, especially after a bit of a down year last year. I'm not sure Jim Montgomery really appreciated the player he was. I don't think Jim Montgomery thought he was a center. I think his play reflected maybe the coach not having a ton of faith in him or trust in him or belief in who he could be last year and the way that he played. And I think it's the complete opposite this year. You can tell that Marco Sturm believes in that player and understands the value of him playing center, and that it's not about having this fast guy that's going to just constantly play fast break hockey as your center. It's about having a guy that is a frontline, two-way, 200-foot player, reliable, guy that you trust, a guy that will be the back checker and the guy, third defenseman in front of the net when he needs to be in the D zone, a guy that can carry the puck up the ice, a guy that likes to pass the puck and distribute, a guy that can certainly finish with his shot when everything is going right. But just in general, one of the hardest workers on the ice and a really conscientious two-way player. That's who you want as your centers, not necessarily these high-flying guys that are going to put up a zillion points and goals and then get completely overmatched in the big situations when the game is on the line.
If the Bruins had their own MVP race, then Pavel Zacha absolutely belongs in the conversation. Because think about the ramifications of them not having him this year. You would have been relying on the developmental curve of Matt Poitras. You would have been relying on maybe Casey Middlestat wouldn't have been shifted to wing. Let's remember that line started out with Middlestat in the middle, Zacha on the left, Arvidsson on the right, and it was a hot mess. And Middlestat needed to be reinvented in smaller area of the ice without the pressure of the load that Zacha carries. Zacha is like the camel in the desert of this hockey team. He is the one who you pile stuff on his back and he marches it from one end to the other, and he brings the integrity and structure of the game with him for 20-something minutes a night. That's what he does. And incredibly, Pasta was the only guy over 18 minutes last night. Nobody was in the 17s, and everybody else was like 16 to 12. And just incredible balance last night. But nice to see Zacha not have such a heavy night. But Zacha has been the guy who, when the puck's not going in for him and his hands don't seem to be great, he still is such a valuable player because he's always in the thick of – he is wearing out the groove in the middle of that table hockey game, one end to the other. He is the guy who is always there. I think that's one of the reasons he was heavily penalized early in the season, was because he so much effort in his game. He never gives up on a puck. He never gives up on a check. And a lot of times that winds up being the one that the refs will catch and say, you got him there in the shins and he went down and you're in the box. That's that goes with the territory. Never been upset at a guy as a Zacha penalty. Would never want to cramp his style. You got to win that war. You got to take those PIMs, win that war, because Zacha has been the saving grace of this team when not a lot else is going well. He's been the horse.
Yep. No, I agree. And I just, a big part of why they had a strong finishing kick was him. He played a major, major role in all of this. It's amazing that at the beginning of the year, there was sort of like questions if things went sideways, he would be the guy that would be kind of thrown overboard and traded. Would he be the odd man out, like with Haggs coming and like somebody needing to like create or open a spot for that kind of a player to come in? Like all of that chatter that was going on at the beginning of the year seems ludicrous now.
It was ludicrous.
Yes. And it was at the time. It made a lot of people scratch their heads. Like, where is this coming from? Who came up with this one? And I think his play down the stretch has just reinforced that. And you feel good for a guy too, that was clearly bummed out by not being able to play in the Olympics because of a concussion and missed out on playing for his Czechia team with Pasternak, and said it was a really rough period for him. And basically he decided, if I'm going to miss the Olympics because I got concussed playing for this Bruins team, I am going to make it worth it for this Bruins season, and I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure this Bruins season is worth it for having the sacrifice that I had to make missing the Olympics. And he has played that way since the Olympic break. He's played like he's going to make sure that this season it was worth what he had to give up. Having gotten hurt for the Bruins right before the Olympics started. So full credit to him. It's been a pleasure to watch him, and really he's kind of he's not Patrice Bergeron, but he's like a center in that vein where he's not a burner. He's not like a high flying guy that's going to pop your eyes out with his skills and do amazing things with the puck. He's just a really strong, solid player that you win hockey games with down the middle, and that's what I want as my center. I don't want a guy that's going to be a liability, a guy that's going to like constantly fly the zone, a guy that is going to be, not there when you need him in the big moments, but will have a zillion goals and points at the end of the year. So, full credit to Zacha for being a great, well-rounded player. Let's get into some emails here before we go, Mick. Mike from Stoneham. Joe, kudos for calling a turnaround on the road. Buffalo is playing the dreaded first game back where stinkers happen, but that is a grown-up win. I keep beating the drum for Sturm to strategically rest some guys by giving them a night off, especially if it's a home, so they might just skip a flight. While this is commonplace in the NBA, there has been pushback that they lack the skill to be resting guys, but when Geeky has gone ice cold and Loheri looks like a traffic cone, as does D partner Hampus. Did we talk about this, Mick?
I don't know that we went there.
Okay, it feels like a drop-off to the other guys on your roster is not as important as the guy coming in, being able to play his role in the system. Jordan Harris has fresh legs. Let him keep them moving. Steeves has been mostly a scratch. Put him on that third line with Kuzi and Pasta and tell him to play like a slot dependent on it. In years past, we've seen both Florida and Tampa really effectively give guys extra days off down the stretch. In some cases, it cost them a game. Unlike the Canes that always seem to run a gas, they had enough healthy bodies to make a deep playoff run. I know these guys all want to play every game, but it seems like discretion is the better part of valor. Sweeney might think the same thing. He has 14 forwards and 8D on the roster. Congrats on your continued work and your health, and love hearing your thoughts about strategic rest versus the hard push for the playoffs. I don't want to rest guys. I don't think they should rest guys. I'm not a big fan of that. Like, I don't mind what Marco Sturm does, Mick, where he gets, defensemen in there and doesn't have them sitting for too long, and he like has a rotation of guys getting into the mix. And it did seem like he was going Steeves and Isamont back and forth until Reichel got here, and now he's given Reichel a pretty long look. And to the point, Reichel does something on every game that makes me stand up and notice. Like, that's a guy, when we're talking about burners and great offensive skill and like, the stuff that I don't necessarily need or want in my center as much as I want a 200-foot two-way game. That guy on the wing does at least one thing during the game where his speed or his skill like shows, and he does something really outstanding. And it has also forced, I think, Morgan Geeky and Elias Lindholm to pick up their pace a little bit. And that is most definitely a thing in hockey where if a line is sort of moving not quite as fast as you want them to, if you put a faster guy with the other two players, it forces them to speed up and it forces them to play faster. And it's inevitably a good thing. And that's why line combinations are so important, and having the same kind of three guys on a line doesn't usually work. You got to have guys that are bringing different things to the table. But I in general, getting back to Mike's point, I'm not a big fan of resting guys down the stretch, especially where you want them to have that playoff edge going into the playoffs. But by the same token, they didn't rest guys when they had that amazing season, Montgomery's first year, and Bergeron, Olmark, and others got hurt, Krejci, I think, too, down the stretch. So it's a fine line that you walk, for sure.
A lot of luck involved with that, too, because
Yep.
Who's to say that 82 is a magic number when all hell's going to break loose?
Yep.
Yeah, it's frustrating as a fan. You want to feel like you're out in front of every decision. You want to take a lot of preventive measures. You want to say, how could you possibly have let this happen when you could have done this? It's kind of like that age-old thing where a guy has a nagging injury, and then you say, well, we don't want to do surgery unless we have to. Well, then you're going to wind up doing it during the playoffs when you need them the most, and instead of getting it taken care of now. But these are not, you know, these are not board game pieces. These are people, and in the real life with human beings, there's desire, there's will, there's a protocol to less invasive before more invasive, and sometimes it doesn't turn out perfectly. So you can't act like it's fantasy sports because it's not.
Yep.
It's real sports. So yeah, I think he got a good decision here coming. Very intriguing one is what I mean to say with Reichel versus Steeves slash Asamont when it comes time to put down for the playoffs. Is Reichel, obviously they wanted, even though it was late in the season, they wanted to take a long look at this guy for the long term because
Yep.
might he be Sweeney's next diamond in the rough? And might the German connection with Marco Sturm as coach be the thing that brings Reichel to a point of commitment and fruition of his obvious talent? This guy skates, and man, he just moves at a different pace than other players.
Yep.
He can burn. He can just transport himself to the next zone with a couple of strides. It's really amazing how quick he is. He's pretty quick with his eyes and his hands as well with what he does with the puck. So the
Yep.
Bruins are like, hey, I mean, if they were already loaded with this kind of player, then you don't do it. But in their case, they're saying, what could get us to another level? That's something, there's a ceiling we can't punch through with what we have. Let's take a look at this guy. It's extremely smart for them to take a shot at this. And so it's a very subtle move, a very footnotey kind of a move. And if it fails, then it still doesn't make it a bad idea because it's the same kind of idea. They got Jonathan Aspero here. They got Morgan Geeky here. They got some other guys. Even Pavel Zacha falls into that category when you consider a guy who was taken sixth overall in the 2015 draft, and the Devils weren't getting out of him what they thought they should that many years into his career. So the Bruins
Yep.
had a journeyman player in Eric Halla, and the fit was right for both teams. And Zacha went through his apprenticeship with Bergeron and Krejci, and lo and behold, what do we have here? We got this. They got this horse who's basically saved their bacon on many nights this season. He's been the guy who's held this whole thing together. He's been the spinal cord of this hockey team. So you have that, and you say you take these shots at these things. This is what you do as a management team. Reichel is an intriguing talent. What happens in the playoffs and how he's playing, is he going to be a liability at that point? Will he be worth it? Those are the calls that could make or break a playoff series, because if he's out there and he doesn't get you the big goal, but he blows a coverage and they get scored on, that can be a series. You just don't, that's how close it can get. These are the tough decisions, but they put themselves in a good position here to make decisions. They can go with extremely reliable, fundamentally sound player like Steeves, a shit stirrer like Asamont, or they can, if they need, depends on what the recipe calls for. Who are they playing? What do they need? If they get Tampa, I bet you're going to see Asamont.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think it will be matchup dependent for sure. And injuries will play a factor as well. And, I think it was incumbent upon them to give Reichel a look like they're giving him now, an extended look to see what he could do. I just wonder how, and I'll read the next question because it actually involves Alex Steeves, but I feel like those two players are going to factor in as well. Greetings, Joe. This is from Mark Daniel. What happened to Alex Steeves? He started out like gangbusters, but now seems to be in the Federal Witness Protection Program. Is he just not the caliber of a regular NHL player? Do you think he makes the team next year? Next year, who knows? I don't. That's too hard of a call. There's so many variables involved. I think he would, based on the contract he has now. But and I think my read on Alex Steeves is he's a good player. I think I've liked him when he's been in the lineup recently. He's played physical. He's been a factor, and he's tried to bring something else if he's not like creating offense or scoring goals. He is not nearly as fast as Reichel. I think that is part of the issue. And the other part of it for me is like when he had been in the lineup, he had not been able to like finish off offensive chances, finish off the play when he was given a chance. And this is what we've seen intermittently with him at times at the NHL level, where he's an elite finisher at the AHL level, and he had 39 goals last year or whatever for the Marlies. He is not able to finish in the same way at the NHL level. Part of that might have to do with who he's playing with, because he did really well when he got some top six looks at times this year early in the season, and he was not getting those so much when he was going in and out of the lineup. And then Mikey Eyssimont was coming in and highly motivated after sitting a lot in the first half of the year and played well when he was in. So it's kind of a, going back and forth with those two. And I think he got caught up in sort of that competition where he couldn't like stay in the lineup and have a long extended stretch where maybe he could show once again what he was doing earlier in the year. But like, I'm not down on him in any way. I think he's an NHL player. I just think now it's a matter of him sort of being able to maximize the chances he gets offensively and continuing to play the physical game, the grinding game, the hustling game that he played in order to earn the contract extension in the first place.
Steve, I'm a big Steeves fan.
I do.
I love how he plays the game, how he sees it. I love the fact that he continues to add. He became a more physical player over the last year or two because he knew that he wasn't going to make it to the NHL without adding something. So I think that it's in him to continue to find little micro improvements to his overall game. He can't make himself as fast as Reichel, but what he can do point A to point B, but what he can do is keep on being the best version of himself that's available and continue trying to improve what that is. And so to me, there's a guy who I don't mind being, anywhere between 21 and 23. And on most nights, anywhere between 15 and 20, because
Right.
I don't feel like he loses you hockey games. You just may need something that he can't do that compels you to try to do a fact-finding mission like they are having right now with Lukas Reichel. This is a fact-finding mission. Is this guy up to it? Can he help us now? Is he a good choice for us to try to keep him here for the long term and see if he can become part of how we become a more dangerous hockey team offensively? He certainly has those elements to give you that thought. I did find it kind of funny that with the Fabian Lysell chatter that has quieted down since the trade deadline. You were hearing so much about him in Providence. When they're going to finally, crap or get off the pot here. And then after the trade deadline and there was no market and he stayed there. And now you get this guy coming on. Why? Because he offers us speed and skill. We know he's a defensive liability, and sometimes he's not engaged with the game. He's blown his first two opportunities, but we think he might make it here. Incredible juxtaposition to the Fabian Lysell story, which has gone on parallel to it at Providence. And so here we are with this. We're doing what we're doing here right now. And with Reichel, it's fun. It's funny. I just found the whole thing kind of funny.
It is funny because, and it's also telling that they brought in Blumel and Steeves last summer, that they traded for Reichel. These are players that have all hopped over Fabian Lysell in terms of being considered for the NHL team and being considered as players that can contribute. And it basically especially with Reichel, where he brings a lot of the same things to the table that they thought they were going to get out of Fabian Lysell, that he's getting looks and that they brought him in, kind of tells you that it tells you exactly how the organization views that player, and that they don't view him as a piece that's ever going to fit to help the team at the NHL level. It's obvious. And the fact that Reichel goes down to the AHL for a very short period of time and then comes up and has been in the lineup. Like, all of this should be, you don't need really, to read between the tea leaves here. Like, it's pretty obvious what's going on. And, I'm surprised that Lysell didn't get traded just for a change of scenery at the trade deadline. But I don't think there was a lot of demand out there for him. I think he may end up just like playing out his thing with the Bruins and then going somewhere else as a free agent, a minor league free agent. We'll see. But I think it's interesting to continue to bring up Lysell and Merkelov. But I think the decision's been made on both of those players that they're, considered AHL what they would call 4A players in baseball, guys that could play really well at the AHL and put up numbers or play reasonably well, but they weren't able to do it at the NHL level, and they were never able to sort of cross that threshold and get there. And it continues to look like those players are that kind of guy or that kind of a classification for them as players. All right, Cap 77. This was sent after the back-to-back games against Toronto and Buffalo last week. They escaped Buffalo with 2 points, a smash and grab, as they say in the UK, and the Leafs won. I thought we might be toast after that terrible sequence for Loheri. I've lauded Mason Loheri for his improved play since the break, but the Sabres' second goal, the shorthanded one, was a carbon copy of the Matthew Knies shorthanded goal on Tuesday. Just going back to Mason Loheri for a second, the sequence of plays, I didn't have a huge deal with the Matthew Knies shorthanded goal. Yes, he lost a battle to a guy that's like 6'4", 220, that's a strong player, that's a big boy and a really strong player, and he was kind of in a tough spot to begin with that his teammates put him in on that one. I didn't fault him that much for that. But the other play to Zach Benson, where he just loses the battle and gets scored on, and then takes the cross-checking penalty on top of it, where they score again on the ensuing power play, like that's a horrendous sequence for Mason Loheri, no doubt about it. And maybe it's an opportune time for him to have like suffered an upper body injury. There's never a great time for injuries, but like a time for him to like kind of reset a little bit. And sort of get ready for the playoffs, and for the Bruins, frankly, to look at some other options as far as guys playing top 4 minutes and what's going to be the best, spot for them in the playoffs. Andrew Peeke, I think, has gotten considerable ice time over the last few games since Loheri sort of went out and his minutes went down. I think Henry Jokiharju played a really good game last night, scored his first goal as a member of the Bruins, like 57 games. And, I think they're kind of taking looks at other different D combinations to see what's going to work best in the playoffs, while knowing that I think they're going to need Mason Loheri's offense and puck moving once the playoffs hit, when he gets healthy.
Well, putting Jokiharju back in allowed them to do as little messing around as they had to, because Loheri, a left shot, was playing right side with Hampus. And so you put Jokiharju in, who is a right shot, on that natural side, and you don't have to be trying to put another left shot over there. If you wanted to do it with Jonathan Aspero, who had been doing it earlier in the season, then you're breaking up the McAvoy-Aspero pairing that they kind of been liking. So they weren't ready to go that route and affect the top 4 configuration. They figured, let's leave that alone and let's just go with Yoki. The Jokiharju situation won't go away. He's on the end of the first year of 3x3, and he's been in Marco Sturm's doghouse most of the season. A guy that you signed at last July at 3x3 is not a guy who should be playing. He should be a number 4 defenseman. He should be playing right side second pairing. That hasn't been the case except in rare circumstances all year long. This continues to be an asterisk that kind of dogs the Bruins, but as long as their crazy good defensive depth remains, and it also keeps Jordan Harris completely out of the mix, that guy's kind of reached a point where the sell-by date is come and gone with him, where it's only going to take like an absolute necessity brought about by massive injuries in order to get him on the ice. And Freddie Brunet might even get ahead of him on that one, because even though in the last pre-Bruins box score I looked at, he was not in it. So I don't know what the deal is with Freddie Brunet, but the bottom line is Harris he's so far out of it that it's hard to imagine that he's going to be able to help them at this point. Maybe he can do it. And he's a terrific skater. He's an alert, smart, talented player, not overly physical and not overly big, but he's quick.
Yep.
So yeah, there's a lot there that it still feels unsettling to me as far as how it's all going. So I think, believe it or not, I'm finally at that point where I myself am now finally thinking the best thing that could happen to them is Loheri gets healthy, because his body of work over the second half has been far more sound. Now, every season, there are teams with weaknesses that they work on, achieve a stretch where you feel like it's in the past, and then it rears its ugly head at the end. I knew it.
Yep.
Of course, that's going to happen with individuals. It always
Yep.
does. You can't stop it. It doesn't mean it isn't going to be not going to be him all the time. He's obviously turned a corner in his career, and as long as he's on that third period and protected matchup, then I think we can believe in the Loheri that we've seen mostly.
Yeah, I agree. And there are gonna be times he's gonna be taken advantage of when he has the puck or he's in the D zone. Like, there are gonna be times where they're gonna attack him, and it's gonna turn into a not great result for the Bruins. He just needs to avoid that the letting the frustration get the best of him and taking the cross checking penalty after the fact. That was just a bad decision on his part. And that's the one that needs to go away. He just, needs to have a short memory when he does get beaten and move on. It's easier said than done when you get victimized for shorthanded goals in back-to-back games. I'm sure it was an extremely critical juncture as far as the poise goes and keeping everything in check. It's hard to do, but like that can't
money
happen
after good.
That can't happen in the playoffs. That's a killer mistake in a playoff game. Number 2, is Hampus Lindholm dealing with an ailment of some sort, or is there Olympic fatigue in play? There are times when he loses the puck off his stick, and miscues like that have snowballed into zone time for the opponent. I don't know about you, Mick. Like, Hampus Lindholm's had a pretty solid season. He's been really good. I think he's played a ton of minutes. He's been a stalwart defenseman, especially when McAvoy went down. I don't think it's Olympic fatigue, because I don't think he played a ton in the Olympics. He played more towards the end, but like, it was a long stretch where he didn't play that much. I just feel like, in my opinion, watching him play, like, maybe whatever went on with his knee and his kneecap last year, he lost a little bit of like speed and explosiveness or something when that happened. I don't know that he looks like he moves around as well as he once did when I watch him play this year. And like, that's why you see some of the sort of holding and hooking and some of the penalty stuff that you notice a little bit more with him. I feel like it's times where you see certain things happen that turn into a negative play. Like, that's always going to happen with defensemen that play a lot of minutes. Stuff happens on the ice. But I do think mobility-wise, I feel like maybe he's not where he was when he first came to the Bruins a few years ago. And maybe it has to do with like the knee issues that he had last year, while like acknowledging that he's played the bulk of the games this year and he's been good and he's been exactly what they needed. And, they're going to need him in the playoffs. And I kind of like, you watch the player and you appreciate what he does for the team, but you also feel like you're watching a guy that maybe isn't quite what he was a few years ago.
Yeah. His skating has always kind of reminded me a little bit of Matthias Tamander. I was a big Matthias Tamander fan. And Timmy had this thing where was extremely well rounded as a skater. His movement in every direction was really solid, but he was kind of like a boat out in a harbor. When he wasn't pushing, he wasn't gliding. Speed never came easy to him. That's how Hampus looks to me, especially now. So I started wondering right before the words came out of your mouth, and I was thinking it, you said it. Maybe we're going to read the book when his career is over and find out that he's been playing in pain. Maybe the knee is just something that he has to work through and it gets worse from time to time, or maybe it's not ever going to be the same as far as the push off and the result. and just things may never be quite as, if he can be a reasonable facsimile of himself and do what he does and do it well, almost all the time, then uh, there's going to be little moments here too in transition when the team's trying to play a faster game where you're wondering if you're doing the right thing, and suddenly you lost the puck when you were trying to make the decision to change your mind about what you were going to do or not do. And I
Yep.
think that's where I see most of the Hampus mishandles seem to be transitional from defense to offense, and kind of little doubt creeps in and something happens there. So, yeah, the movement may be a little laborious, but I'm not sure that he was ever the most fluid guy to begin with. He just seems to me like a guy who does all things well, and none of it's super pretty, but he's good.
Yeah, no question. And when he's paired with Mason Lowry, sometimes, like, or if, let's say, he's paired with somebody that's a little bit more sort of offensive minded, if that sort of, curbs, has him play a lot more conservatively too, and you don't notice some of the things that he can do really well in different circumstances. But like, it's going to be, I I think even if it's what he is now is what he is for the rest of his career, he's a very effective defenseman and he's really good. There's just certain moments where you see things and you're like, okay, that's just that's the reality of Hampus Lindholm at this point. Despite Korpisalo's price tag, would you regard both goaltenders as being worth every penny this season, Mick?
I don't even need an asterisk. I think this was a brilliant plan. I think getting a reliable journeyman backup to push Swayman and be a good goalie for this team, it was always the right move. I know that they spent an awful lot of last year trying to get Swayman going and endure his in-season training camp because it didn't happen beforehand. Uh, and then this year he got his camp. And then some of their stinkers have been in front of Corpusalo. I think Corpusalo's been a good goalie. I credit Sturm for being a little gutsy in front of the mic last night and volunteering that, yeah, there was some times early in the season where he was a little shaky, but I think that's gone and he's back to being Corpy. It's like he allows himself to say things that he doesn't have to say.
Yep,
I'm not sure if I was standing where he was that I would have even said that. But he offered it. He likes to keep everyone accountable, including the goaltenders. It's how he
yep.
believes, and credit to him for that because he's gotten great results out of this hockey team. They've really played up to their potential as far as I'm concerned, and I think Corpusalo has been a very good number two.
Yeah, and it's funny, Mick, when you look back on it now, boy, that Linus Ullmark trade was a really good one for the Boston Bruins. Not just for what they got, and that's a significant part of it. Kastelik has been a very useful player, an identity type player for the Bruins. Korpisalo has been a very good backup. The pick that they got was extremely important part of it, and now you see Ullmark with the Senators, and I feel for the guy because I know there's a mental health issues that he cited that he's been grappling with in the recent past. But boy, it's him not playing, not wanting to play, whatever happened over the weekend, and then he gets pulled from the last game after allowing 5 goals on 6 shots. And Ottawa is one of those teams that are trying to chase the Bruins, and there's a bunch of teams that are taking on water and really having a tough time. And Ullmark is right in the middle of all that stuff with the Ottawa Senators right now.
Yeah, I know. I feel bad for Linus. I feel like he's had such highs and lows to his career. And I think when you make a lot of money, you've had your career contract, and then you hit one of those lows, and now you're in a Canadian market. Boy, imagine if this was the Toronto Maple Leafs. My God, as it is, the Sens is, you know, it's not far from Toronto. It's not far from Montreal. So
Yep.
you'll get a lot of Canadian scrutiny there. It's a tough place to be when you're going through what he's going through. Um, he was an incredible goaltender for the Boston Bruins, and the goalie hug era was a great era. It didn't yield everything that we had thought it might, but uh, the Bruins made a choice that made sense to them, and it's paying dividends.
No question. All right. Last thing from Cap 77. Good luck to Dartmouth playing its first NCAA tournament game in 46 years. You said one of my first hockey games as a kid was a game at Thompson Arena in 1977. The Frozen Four will roll on after a bunch of big regional games last weekend. Any thoughts on any of those games? There were a lot of Bruins prospects playing in those games. Some played really well, some not as noticeable. Will Zellers and his team is still alive, and I thought he wasn't a big scorer, but he played really well setting up plays and was very noticeable on a stacked North Dakota team. But your guy, Elliot Grunwald, I think for Quinnipiac, had a very strong regional, played really well. Chris Pelosi, too, in a nice run for Quinnipiac. Any thoughts you had if you watched any of the NCAA stuff?
Yeah, I tried to watch a little bit. I didn't get to see much. I was away for 8 days, and I wasn't able to see any down there during the heart of this thing. I'm always thrilled to hear that they're doing well. I noticed that Grunwald was as a true sophomore, he was a first-team ECAC All-Star on defense. This kid reminds me a little bit of a left shot Nick Boynton, minus the fists. Yep. He's not out there beating the hell out of people, but when Nick Boynton played for the Bruins and he was a young lion and he was a really good defenseman, he played very tight up against players, very aggressive defensively, not like Calgary Flame style where you just run around and hit people, more like he just played a very, very tight, aggressive gap, and he recovers so well and turns so well in both directions, and makes plays. And he's not a huge numbers guy because Quinnipiac moves the puck, so a lot of plays he starts, he doesn't wind up on the sheet for. But he just does what defensemen are supposed to do, and he does it with aplomb. And I think he's the Bruins' best prospect. I'm going out on a limb.
He's definitely one of them. He's definitely one of them. I mean, I've noticed the shot and the way he the way he can view the ice, the way he moves, like the size that he has and the skating ability at the size that he is. Like, there's a lot to like about him. You noticed it right away at the first development camp, and he's definitely a pick they got right.
As a freshman, he would shut down big players on the other team, upperclassmen. He would just shut them down. Take the puck away, hit him, move him out, eliminate him. It's like this kid. I guess as he gets to each increment in speed of game tempo, that's always a question. No matter how authoritative you look in the tempo you're playing right now. But man, oh man, am I looking forward to seeing this kid climb the rungs.
Yeah, and he's a Vermont kid that's a huge Bruins fan growing up, so that's always a little extra. When the kid is a very good player, when he's a New England kid as well. So good stuff. All right, Mick, thank you very much for joining us. Let's thank our sponsors. We are going to thank Prizepicks. We love Prizepicks. It is college basketball season, so it's a big time of year for Prizepicks. The playoff push is heating up, and the tournament hoops are here, and there's no better way to cash in, if you're right, on the high-flying hoops action than Prizepicks, where it always feels good to be right. Every bucket, every dime, and every win means more when you're playing on Prizepicks. And with their brand new team picks markets, you can now pick game winners, spreads, and totals on top of the player picks you already know and love. So cash in, if you're right, during all the clutch baskets, slam dunks, and Cinderellas this spring with team picks on Prizepicks. Download the Prizepicks app today and pick your first game winner, spread, or total as the playoff push rolls on, and get $50 in daily fantasy lineups when you play your first $5 lineup when you use code CLNS. That's code CLNS to get $50 in daily fantasy lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. Also want to thank our sponsors at Awaken 180. Awaken 180 is working for me, down 30 pounds in 6 weeks. Let it work for you as well. Online at awaken180weightloss.com. That's awaken180weightloss.com, or call 844-346-1800 and tell them Haggs from CLNS sent you. Also, thank you for listening to Pucks with Haggs podcast, a proud member of the CLNS Media Network. Make sure to hit subscribe to the Bruins Ringside YouTube channel and turn on notifications for when a new video drops on the channel. Mick, thanks for joining us, my friend.
Always a pleasure, Joe. Nice to see less of you as we move along here. And I mean that
Yes.
in terms of frequency.
Yes. As long as I don't disappear altogether. We want to get, down. Less of me is good. None of me is not good. All right, Mick, thank you very much. Everybody else out there, thank you for listening. We'll see you at the rink.